There's a career center on the campus of Georgetown University where I work as Dean of Students. The center is beautiful and inviting. It's light-filled, comfortably furnished with sofas and chairs and magazines, and staffed by a team of administrators ready to advise students contemplating their post-graduation lives. And usually at this time of year, it would be filled with students waiting for news from prospective employers or graduate schools, anxiously wondering what that news will mean for their lives. Where will they live? Will they find an apartment? Will they have friends? Have they made the right choice? Contrast that with the story in today's readings. Here we find Samuel and Eli. Eli is an aging leader, dim of sight, and Samuel, a boy of 11, asleep in the temple at Shiloh, guarding the ark. Hardly an inviting setting. No comfortable couches to put your head on, only a cold stone floor. But Samuel, although he doesn't yet know it, is also waiting for news, and this is news that will transform his life. Twice, God called the sleeping Samuel, but Samuel did not recognize the voice of God. Only when God called for the third time did he respond, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." And as I reflected on today's readings, I was struck by this powerful narrative of vocation awakened and pondered what it means at this extraordinary moment in our lives, at this extraordinary moment in our world. In the 14th century, Catherine of Siena said, "Be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire." And 600 years later, we continue to struggle with this question, continue to ask, who does God mean us to be? Now, this, of course, is not a question that only Christians struggle with. The Dharmic tradition speaks of the sacred duty to stay true to oneself, to find one's dharma, one's true path. And the Hebrew word for work, avada, is also the word for prayer. The Torah teaches that at its most true, our work, our vocation has the potential to repair the world. In Christianity, vocation is a calling to live a full and authentic life. Finding our vocation is, for most of us, a lifelong journey. I know that it has been for me, hills and valleys, times of silence, and times when the voice from the heart speaks clearly. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. But even if we listen attentively, for most of us, God's call is not as clear as it was for Samuel. So how do we discern our vocation? How do we know where our gifts meet the needs of the world? I've often found inspiration and instruction in the lives of others. And I've always loved biographies. One I recently reread, "The World Will Be Saved by Beauty," is a biography of the saintly Dorothy Day by her granddaughter, Kate Hennessy. Radical pacifist, advocate for the homeless, Catholic convert, Dorothy Day left an exciting bohemian life, left the man she loved, and embraced the poverty to live a life authentically hers. Now that is a vocation story. Dorothy Day fell in love. As the Jesuit Pedro Arrupe says, "Nothing is more practical than finding God than in falling in love in a quite absolute and final way. What you are in love with and what seizes your imagination will affect everything. It will decide what gets you out of bed in the morning, what you do with your evenings, how you spend your weekends, what you read, who you know, what breaks your heart, and what amazes you with joy and gratitude. Fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything." Over the past year, we've been confronted with the fragility of life in a way that few of us have ever experienced. And from that has come a hunger for connection and community. And like many of us, I have navigated these months of isolation by reaching out to family and friends, women I have known, like former students. Sarah, a pediatrician caring for the youngest victims of the pandemic. Sakasha, who left Wall Street to work with the vulnerable elderly in a nursing home in Florida. Alyssa, crafting policies to improve the lives of the urban poor. Joanna, walking in humble accompaniment with migrants at the Mexican border. Elisa teaching immigrant children in the Los Angeles neighborhood where she herself grew up, and Yamiche speaking truth to power as a journalist. These are women who have found their vocation, living lives of joy and purpose, authentic lives, lighting the world on fire. So what do we choose to do in this moment of challenge and opportunity? I know myself how easy it is to return to the familiar routine. In T.S. Eliot's words, to measure out my life through coffee spoons, literally and figuratively. So as we begin to emerge from isolation and division, can we pause to listen to the stirrings of our hearts? Or are we ready to let the noise back in, and back in it will come? Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And we must remember that implicit in our Christian vocation is a call to leadership. Leadership, not to be confused with high office, but rather moral leadership, a commitment to the common good and to the care of the most vulnerable in our world, joining Dorothy Day's charity with justice. The vocation of citizenship demands that we live with integrity and compassion, that we answer a call to a saintliness demanded by the present moment, that we see in Dorothy Day and in Sakasha and Sarah and Elisa and Alyssa, Joanna and Yamiche, and in all our sisters who do this hard, joyful work of this beautiful, broken world. So let's not forget the lessons of this year. Let's raise our voices together on behalf of those whose voices are silenced and say, with joy and with courage, here I am, Lord, I come to do your will.